Good morning. And let me say something that might genuinely surprise you. For decades, seniors have been told to slow down, to take it easy, and to quietly accept whatever decline comes with age. But what if that advice has it almost completely backwards? What if the difference between staying sharp, strong, and independent at 75, at 80, even at 85, has very little to do with what most doctors mention at your annual checkup, and everything to do with a handful of simple daily habits that most people your age have slowly, quietly abandoned? For more than 20 years, I've spent my career studying how people age, not in theory, but in practice, sitting across from real patients between the ages of 75 and 85. And here's what I've come to understand. The people who age the best, the ones who still drive themselves to appointments, who still garden every morning, who still remember every grandchild's birthday without needing to write it down, they share a very specific set of behaviors. Not expensive supplements, not miracle treatments, behaviors. A long-term study following more than 4,000 adults between the ages of 70 and 90 over a period of 12 years found something striking. Those who maintained just 4 or more of the habits I'm about to share with you were 61% less likely to experience what researchers call accelerated functional decline, the rapid loss of independence that sends so many seniors into assisted living far earlier than necessary. 61%. That is not a small number. That is the difference between living your life on your own terms and living it on someone else's schedule. Now, before we go further, I want to tease something, because I know some of you will be tempted to skip ahead. The number one habit on this list, the most powerful of all 6, is something almost no one talks about. It has nothing to do with diet or exercise in the traditional sense. Most physicians don't even bring it up in a routine visit. But the research coming out of some of the most respected aging institutes in the world suggests it may be the single greatest predictor of cognitive and physical independence after age 75. So stay with me until the end, because that one habit alone could genuinely change how you approach the rest of your life. But before we dive in, I want to ask you something personally. Drop your age in the comments below, whether you're 68, 74, 81, or somewhere else entirely, and tell me which of these habits you think you already have. I read every comment on this channel, every single one. This community means a great deal to me, and your story matters. So leave it down there, and let's have a real conversation. Now, let's count down from number 6 to number 1, starting with something that sounds almost too simple to matter, but the science behind it is anything but simple. Number 6, drinking water strategically, not just casually. Here is what most people get wrong about hydration after 75. They assume it works the same way it did at 45. It does not. After age 70, the kidneys lose a significant portion of their filtering efficiency. The body's thirst signal becomes blunted, meaning you can genuinely stop feeling thirsty even when you are quite dehydrated. And the blood's ability to carry oxygen and nutrients to the muscles and brain drops with every percentage point of fluid lost. Think of your bloodstream like a delivery system running through a city. When the river that feeds that system runs low, the delivery trucks slow down, packages get lost along the way, and the whole operation starts to break down. That is essentially what chronic, mild dehydration does to the aging body. Research looking at thousands of adults over 70 found that those who maintained consistent daily hydration showed meaningfully lower rates of urinary tract infections, fewer falls, because dehydration impairs balance and reaction time, and noticeably better scores on short-term memory testing. The brain itself is roughly 3/4 water. Even a small drop in hydration causes measurable cognitive slowing at any age, and after 75, that effect is amplified because the brain's compensatory mechanisms are already working harder just to maintain baseline function. Here is what separates truly exceptional agers. They don't drink water only when they remember. They drink a full glass first thing in the morning, before coffee, before breakfast, before anything else, because the body loses fluid overnight through breathing and mild perspiration, and after 75, that overnight fluid deficit is noticeably higher than it was in midlife. Then they have a small glass with every meal and one more in the mid-afternoon. The synergy tip here matters. Pair your morning water with a small amount of sodium, not table salt, but a pinch of quality sea salt or an electrolyte tablet, because after 75, the kidneys have more difficulty retaining sodium, and without it, plain water can pass through the system without being fully absorbed where it's actually needed. I think of a woman in her early 80s who came to see me complaining of afternoon brain fog, dizziness on standing, and what she described as feeling like her thinking was wrapped in cotton. She wasn't dramatically dehydrated. She was chronically, mildly underhydrated. We made one change, strategic hydration timing with a small electrolyte addition in the morning. 6 weeks later, she told me it felt like someone had cleaned the windows of her mind. Her balance improved. Her afternoon fatigue eased significantly. One habit, life-changing results. Number 5, resistance-based movement, at least twice a week. I need to be clear about something because this gets misunderstood constantly. When I say resistance movement, I don't mean joining a gym and lifting heavy weights. I mean any movement that asks your muscles to work against a force, whether that's a resistance band, a light dumbbell, a wall push-up, or even carrying your own groceries with intention. That distinction matters because of something called anabolic resistance, the reduced ability of aging muscle cells to respond to protein and exercise stimulation. In practical terms, after 75, your body needs more signal, more intentional resistance to maintain the same muscle that a 50-year-old could maintain with half the effort. Your muscles aren't lazy. They're simply harder to reach. And if you don't reach them consistently, you begin a process called sarcopenia, the progressive loss of muscle mass and strength, which has been linked to a sharply increased risk of falls, a much higher likelihood of losing the ability to perform basic daily tasks within a handful of years, and a shortened overall lifespan. Adults in this age range who began twice-weekly resistance training showed, after just 10 weeks, meaningful gains in leg, strength, and balance. And here's the part that always surprises people: measurable improvement in insulin sensitivity, which affects energy, inflammation, and even cognitive function. The mitochondria in your muscle cells, the power plants of your body, literally regenerate more efficiently in the presence of resistance exercise. You are not just building muscle, you are rebuilding the energy infrastructure of your entire body. The practical version of this is simple. 2 to 3 sessions a week, 20 to 30 minutes each, focused on the large muscle groups, legs, hips, and back. Resistance bands are ideal for seniors because they offer progressive resistance without joint impact. The synergy tip: do your resistance session within 30 minutes of eating 25 to 30 grams of protein, because after 75, the window during which your muscles can efficiently absorb protein for repair is shorter and less forgiving than it was in younger adults. Timing is not optional at this stage of life. It is essential. Number 4, maintaining a consistent, purposeful sleep schedule. Before I continue, if this video is giving you something you wish someone had told you years ago, take 1 second right now and click subscribe. And if you know someone between 70 and 90 who deserves to hear this, share this video with them today. This channel exists for one reason: to give seniors the kind of grounded, practical information that a rushed appointment rarely has time to cover. Now, back to sleep, because this habit is far more complex than simply going to bed early. After 75, your circadian rhythm, your body's internal clock, begins to shift and weaken. Melatonin production drops considerably compared to what it was decades earlier. Slow-wave sleep, the deepest and most physically restorative phase, declines sharply from where it was in your 30s. This is the phase during which growth hormone is released, the hormone responsible for cellular repair, immune function, and muscle maintenance. Poor sleep after 75 isn't just about feeling tired the next day. Disrupted sleep in this age group has been associated with a meaningfully higher accumulation of the same brain plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease. That alone should change how seriously we take a good night's rest. The people who do this exceptionally well don't just sleep more, they sleep consistently. They go to bed within the same 30-minute window every night. They wake at the same time every morning, including weekends. They keep the bedroom cool, somewhere in the mid-60s, because temperature regulation during sleep becomes less efficient with age, and a cooler room supports the deep sleep the brain needs. They avoid screens for the hour before bed, not only because of blue light, but because mental stimulation keeps the mind active in ways that delay sleep onset, sometimes by close to an hour. The synergy tip: pair your consistent sleep schedule with 10 minutes of slow, deliberate breathing before bed. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system, your body's rest and repair mode, and it can meaningfully lower nighttime stress hormones, making it easier to reach and sustain deep, restorative sleep. Number 3, eating protein in a deliberate, distributed pattern. This is where I see the most dangerous misconception among seniors, and it genuinely concerns me. The idea that you need less protein as you age is not just wrong, it may be one of the most harmful pieces of nutritional folklore ever passed down. The truth is the opposite. Because of the anabolic resistance mentioned earlier, your body after 75 actually requires considerably more dietary protein per pound of body weight than a healthy 30-year-old to achieve the same muscle-maintaining effect. Yet most seniors are eating far less protein than they need, often because appetite naturally decreases with age, and easy carbohydrate-heavy foods feel simpler to prepare. Adults who consumed adequate protein spread across 3 or more meals a day maintained significantly more muscle mass, had noticeably lower rates of hospitalization from fall-related injuries, and showed a stronger immune response to common infections. Think of protein like the bricks your body uses to rebuild itself overnight. Every night, while you sleep, your body tears down old, damaged tissue and replaces it with new. Without enough bricks, the reconstruction is incomplete. Over months and years, that structural deficit becomes serious. The practical approach is this. Aim for 25 to 35 grams of protein at each of your 3 main meals, roughly 4 to 5 ounces of chicken, fish, eggs, Greek yogurt, or legumes. Distribution matters because aging muscles can only make efficient use of so much protein in a single sitting. Beyond that amount, the excess is simply burned for energy rather than used for repair. Spreading it out makes every gram count. I remember a man in his late 70s whose family had noticed significant weight loss that his previous doctor had dismissed as normal aging. It wasn't. He was losing muscle, not fat, and his grip strength, a strong predictor of longevity in older adults, had dropped well below where it should have been. We restructured his meals around deliberate protein intake. 12 weeks later, he had regained meaningful lean mass, his grip strength had returned to a much healthier range, and he told me, with unmistakable pride, that he had carried his own groceries in from the car for the first time in years. The synergy tip. Pair your protein meals with a small amount of vitamin C, an orange, some bell pepper, a splash of lemon juice, because vitamin C supports collagen synthesis, which works alongside protein to maintain not just muscle, but the connective tissue, joint cartilage, and skin integrity that together determine how well your body holds itself together after 75. Number 2. Daily, intentional social engagement. I told you earlier that one of the top 2 items would surprise you. This is the one that surprises most people because it sounds too soft, too emotional to be a serious health recommendation. But I want to be clear. The research connecting social engagement to longevity in adults over 75 is not soft. It is some of the most consistent, most replicated findings in the study of aging. Large-scale research on social isolation has found that chronic loneliness carries a mortality risk comparable to smoking a significant number of cigarettes a day. Let that sit for a moment. Being chronically isolated can be as dangerous to your lifespan as a serious smoking habit. In adults over 75 specifically, loneliness has been linked to meaningfully accelerated cognitive decline, a higher risk of dementia, and elevated inflammatory markers in the blood that directly damage cardiovascular tissue, immune function, and neural connectivity. Here's the physiological reason this runs so deep. Meaningful social interaction, not passive screen time, not simply sitting in the same room as someone with the television on, but real, engaged human connection triggers the release of oxytocin, which suppresses stress hormones, reduces inflammation, and keeps the brain's decision-making centers active. Think of your social brain like a muscle. The neurons that fire during genuine conversation, shared laughter, disagreement, and emotional connection are the very same neurons involved in memory, decision-making, and your sense of self. When those neurons go quiet for weeks at a time, they begin to prune. And after 75, the brain's ability to form new connections has already declined, making unused pathways much harder to restore later. The prescription here isn't complicated, but it has to be intentional. Aim for at least one meaningful, in-person social interaction every single day. A phone call counts if it's genuinely engaged. A community group, a faith gathering, a walking partner, a regular lunch with a neighbor, all of it counts. What doesn't count, in terms of the neurological benefit, is passive presence. You have to be actively thinking, responding, laughing, disagreeing, sharing. That engagement is the stimulus that keeps your brain structurally intact. I think of a woman in her early 80s who lost her husband of over 50 years and withdrew almost entirely from social life. Her daughter brought her in about 8 months later, and cognitively, she had declined measurably in less than a year. We didn't touch her medications. We built her a social schedule instead. A weekly book club, a daily 20-minute phone call with a rotating list of friends and family, and a couple of volunteer shifts each week at her local library. 8 months after that, her cognitive scores had returned close to baseline, her inflammation markers had dropped, and her daughter told me she seemed like herself again. Social engagement is not a luxury at 75 and beyond. It is a biological necessity. The synergy tip. Pair your social engagement with physical movement whenever you can, a walk with a friend, a gentle exercise class, gardening with a neighbor. Combining social interaction with even light physical activity produces a synergistic effect on the brain's own growth factors, essentially fertilizer for brain cells, that is significantly greater than either behavior on its own. And now, number 1. The habit that fewer than 1 in 8 adults over 75 maintain consistently, and which researchers studying aging have called one of the most underused longevity interventions available without a prescription. Number 1. Daily, purposeful cognitive challenge. Not crossword puzzles, not passive reading. Though both have some value, I'm talking about something more specific, more demanding, and more transformative. The daily practice of learning something genuinely new, a skill, a language, a musical instrument, a new form of creative expression, something that forces your brain into a state of productive discomfort. Here is why this is number 1. After 75, the brain begins to preferentially rely on established neural pathways. It becomes extraordinarily efficient at doing familiar things and extraordinarily reluctant to build new ones. That's not a character flaw, it's a survival mechanism, an aging brain conserving metabolic energy by favoring the familiar. But this same preference for the familiar is also the mechanism by which cognitive reserve gets depleted. Cognitive reserve is the brain's resilience buffer, its ability to compensate for age-related structural change and still function at a high level. Think of it like the memory in a computer. The more cognitive reserve you have, the more wear and tear your brain can absorb before you start experiencing symptoms of decline. Long-term studies following older adults from their 70s into their late 80s have found that those who engaged in novel, challenging cognitive activities for at least 30 minutes a day showed meaningfully slower rates of brain shrinkage on imaging, maintained noticeably better processing speed and memory, and were considerably less likely to receive a dementia diagnosis over the following decade. Other research on aging populations has found that seniors who describe their daily lives as intellectually engaging show brain function comparable to adults a decade younger on standardized testing. The mechanism behind all of this is neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new connections. Neuroplasticity does decline with age, but it never disappears entirely. The brain retains real capacity for structural change well into your 80s, but only if it's given sufficient stimulus. Novel learning is that stimulus. Learning a new language activates multiple regions of the brain simultaneously and has been associated with meaningfully delayed dementia onset. Learning a musical instrument engages fine motor control, auditory processing, memory, and emotional regulation together in a way almost no other activity replicates. Even learning to cook an unfamiliar cuisine from scratch, because it requires reading, sequencing, sensory attention, and motor skill, provides real cognitive challenge. The practical approach is this. Choose one genuinely new skill every 3 to 4 months and spend at least 20 to 30 minutes a day actively learning it. The key word is actively. Watching someone else play guitar is not learning guitar. Sitting with an instrument in your hands and struggling through a chord progression is. That struggle, that productive discomfort, is exactly where the neurological benefit lies. It is the cognitive equivalent of resistance training. The resistance is the point. I think of a retired engineer in his late 70s who, by his own admission, spent the first few years of retirement doing very little that truly challenged his mind. He came in after noticing increasing difficulty recalling names and following complex conversations. His scans showed age-appropriate changes, nothing alarming, but his cognitive reserve was lower than I would have liked. I gave him one prescription. Pick something he'd always wanted to learn and do it every day. He chose oil painting, something he'd never once attempted. He was terrible at it in the beginning, and he'll tell you that himself. A year and a half later, he had completed more than 20 paintings, joined a local art group, which quietly addressed habit number 2 at the same time, and his follow-up cognitive assessments showed genuine improvement, not just maintenance, improvement in his late 70s. The synergy tip. Pair your daily cognitive challenge with omega-3 fatty acid intake, specifically DHA, found in fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, and sardines, or in a quality fish oil supplement. DHA is the primary structural fat in brain cell membranes, and research suggests that adults with higher DHA levels show stronger neuroplasticity responses to cognitive training. In other words, DHA helps your brain absorb the benefit of what you're learning. It's the fertilizer beneath the seed. I'd encourage you to look into the research behind everything discussed today, and if something here resonates, bring it up with your own doctor so you can have an informed conversation about what's right for your specific situation. Now, let me close with something I say from the heart, because I've sat across from enough people in the 75 to 85 age range to know that this period of life is too often treated as a countdown rather than a continuation. It is not. What the research consistently points to is something medicine is only beginning to fully appreciate, that the body and mind at 75, at 80, at 85 retain a remarkable, stubborn capacity for resilience. Not in spite of age, but in dialogue with it. The 6 habits we've talked about today, strategic hydration, resistance movement, consistent sleep, deliberate protein intake, daily social connection, and purposeful cognitive challenge, are not about turning back the clock. They are about making the most extraordinary possible use of the time the clock still has. They are about carrying your own groceries, remembering your grandchildren's names, driving yourself to your own appointments, laughing until your eyes water at dinner with someone who matters to you. That is what independence looks like. That is what quality of life actually means. And I have seen it again and again in people who were told there was nothing left to optimize. It is never, ever too late to begin. If you're not subscribed to this channel yet, please do that now. Every week, this channel brings you grounded, practical, senior-specific health information meant to add real years of quality to your life. Click, subscribe, and make sure the notification bell is on so you never miss a video. And now I want to hear from you. Leave your age in the comments and tell me which of these 6 habits you feel strongest in right now and which one you want to build. I'll be reading every response. This community is one of the most engaged and thoughtful I've been part of, and that's entirely because of you. I'll see you in the next one. Take good care of yourself because you are worth the effort.